right, everybody, what's good? What's good? This is the second channel for the Jumbo package. If you haven't seen the first channel, I have no clue what you're doing here because there's no videos yet. But if this was suggested to you, that's actually pretty surprising. But yeah, I just wanted to make the second channel to do more off-the-cuff kind of stuff instead of the heavily edited content because it takes so long to get out, and I really want to be able to get out more of my shitty draft takes. So today we're going to be doing the first mock draft that I've put out for 2024. So we'll kind of see how that goes. So without any further ado, let's just get into it. For the Bears, I'm going with Caleb Williams. I've discussed this at length on my Caleb Williams video. If you look at the pinned comment, you can pretty much see the majority of my reasoning for this, but I'll kind of boil it down here into a summary. I think that you want the guy with the higher upside. Fields has had a lot of the same issues out of college, and he hasn't really improved on them, and you've got to make a decision on him soon. With Caleb, he does have a lot of the same issues as Justin Fields, but I think he has a lot more upside as a passer, and you're resetting the rookie contract window. I think that it's just better to get a guy who has a higher upside as a passer because you see what can be done in the NFL now with such high-level passers like Mahomes, right? Like, he is able to win a Super Bowl 2 years in a row with a receiving core that's probably, I mean, last year it was bottom 10. This year it might have been the worst in the league. I can't really, no, the Panthers were probably, no, Panthers were definitely worse. Off the top of my head, I would say that they were the second worst in the league, and it's like he's still winning those games. I don't think Fields has that kind of upside, although I think he's a quality quarterback. I think in this year, when you have the number one pick, you really want to try to hit that upside. And I think with Williams, he has a good enough floor that at worst, he's going to be Justin Fields, basically, and at best, he could be Pat Mahomes or, you know, his own version of himself, Caleb Williams, but that doesn't really mean anything right now. So I think, honestly, if I'm them, I'm going with Caleb Williams, but I think that they're kind of in a no-lose situation. I think that they're kind of good either way. So let's get into the next pick now. For Washington, I mean, I don't think that you really want to stick with Sam Howell. I think that this is kind of a no-brainer here to go with Drake May. You need a quarterback unless you want to stick with Sam Howell, but I just don't think that's a really good decision for them. So I mean, I don't really know what else to add besides that. I think May has the upside to become like a Justin Herbert level player. And I mean, they'll take that all day. I mean, they have an excellent wide receiver core. They really need to work on the defensive line now, not the interior, the edges, which is hysterical considering that that was like their best point last year. But I mean, I think that there's like, it's not like an amazing edge class or anything, and I wouldn't take any of them at number 2, so there's that. You don't really need a receiver, so, I mean, taking Harrison and just adding him to McLaurin and Dotson and Samuel is just, like, too much. You could maybe take Brock Bowers. They need a tight end, but it's like, they would have to trade down and take Brock Bowers. You can't take him at 2 because you're giving up so much value because people are definitely going to trade up for Drake May. But I don't think that you really trust Howell going into the season. It's like, you know, I think that the best idea is to go with Drake May. I think he has a ton of upside, and I think he'll work out really well for them. Now let's move on to the Patriots. I go so back and forth on them. It's tough. If this were Bill Belichick, I don't think that he would take Marvin Harrison. I mean, I would hope he would, but it's like they need a quarterback. Like that's no doubt, right? I personally don't see Jayden Daniels as being worth a top 5 pick at this moment. I've only gotten to watch 3 games of his on all 22, and I'm not just going to watch the highlights and think that he's like incredible, because that's what happens anytime you watch highlights of anybody. I could put on Greg Dortch highlights and think he's the best. Actually, that was an unnecessary stray at Greg Dortch. I love Greg Dortch. Who is somebody, I don't know, you could put on like, I was going to say Mark Sanchez too. I think Mark Sanchez is a nice guy. I don't know. But pick any random NFL player who's not like Eric Flowers, boom, or Eli Apple. There we go. Eli Apple is a good example. I could put on Eli Apple highlights and he'll seem like he's the best player in the NFL. And I just think that I don't really want to scout prospects that way. Anyway, the whole point of this tangent was that I was trying to say I've only watched 3 games of Jayden Daniels, all 22, and I can't get my hands on any more, unfortunately. But in those 3 games, I haven't really loved what I've seen from him. I think he's an excellent rusher. and I think he'll probably go within the top 10, but to take him at 3 to me personally is rich. I don't love it, and I also just don't really see him fitting in with that Patriots kind of culture. Not so much the culture, but like their style. I don't really know what they'll be with a rushing quarterback. And it's like, they could do something with it and try, but I just don't really know where that's going to go. So ultimately, like, if I'm them, I'm taking Marvin Harrison Jr. I have no idea if this is predictive or if it's what what do people say? It's like what I would do mock draft. I'm just fucking doing it. I don't care. To me right now, it's between Marvin Harrison Jr. and Joe Alt. You have like a generational prospect at receiver. Like, I don't, and like, is Kendrick Bourne stopping you, or like Devontae Parker? Like, are they stopping you from taking a receiver? No. Like, so I really don't. I don't think that anything would stop them from taking Marvin Harrison Jr. It's really more just I think that the coaching staff doesn't place a huge priority on that if they are the same as Belichick. That's kind of what I'm getting at, right? So I think that it would just be stupid to not take Marvin Harrison Jr. I mean, they have problems at quarterback, but to me, no quarterbacks here are worth the number 3 overall pick. So I guess we'll convert this into a what I would do mock draft, and we will steal Marvin Harrison Jr. Now, that pains me because I really love the fit of Marvin Harrison Jr. to the Cardinals. He works his best on the sidelines, and where does Kyler Murray throw the best? To the sidelines. So I think that they would be an excellent pairing together instead of Bailey Zappi throwing to Marvin Harrison Jr. or McCorkle Jones. But, the Cardinals, I would be interested in them taking Malik Nabers. I don't think that they super need a tight end. I meant to say tackle. I don't think they super need a tackle. I think Beachum is like, all right. And then obviously they have Paris Johnson there. I think they have Humphreys too. I don't have it in front of me, but I'm just kind of going off the top of my head. I think that they're good at tackle. I think that they need a lot of help on their defensive line, but there's not really anybody who I feel good about taking with the 4th pick, and I'm not going to be doing any trades here. So the way that I kind of see this, I would take Malik Nabers because I think Marquise Brown's contract is up. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but it's like you have a guy then who can win to all levels of the field. Then you have Michael Wilson on the other side, and then you have Trey McBride as the tight end. It's like I think that your receiving core gets really excellent, and you're kind of taking Malik Nabers, who is Marquise Brown, but a step up. It's like he's taller than Marquise Brown. He's like an actual X receiver, whereas Brown is a bit, he's not like just a speedster, but I would say he's a bit one-dimensional. He just wins. He primarily wins deep, and he's like a speedy guy. I think Malik Nabers is way more versatile than that, and you don't have to pay him as much. I don't think taking Odunze would be good for them because I think he's a little bit redundant with Michael Wilson, both kind of like tall outside receivers. So I don't really think that's a best decision for them. So for me, if I'm them, I'm taking Malik Nabers. So next up, we have the Chargers. The only people I'm really considering here are Joe Alt or Brock Bowers. You obviously have Rashawn Slater on the one side. I'm not like a huge Trey Pipkins guy or anything. I think that they would extremely benefit from having Joe Alt on the offensive line, and it would make Justin Herbert's life much easier. But it would also make his life much easier to have a great receiving weapon like Brock Bowers, who can basically work from the slot or as a tight end, and who is actually a pretty solid blocker. Like, I know he's undersized for a tight end, but everything I've seen from him so far, I think I've watched 2 games of his tape at this time. I really liked what I've seen from him blocking. I was surprised because I thought he was just going to be another one of these, uber athletic tight ends who's not like a great blocker, and like a Dalton Kincaid type or a Mike Gesicki. Although I would say that Kincaid's a better blocker than Gesicki. Gesicki's just terrible at blocking. But they have Greg Roman in there. He likes to throw to the tight ends. I stole that from Bengal. I don't know if he stole that from anybody because I've been watching his mock drafts recently, and I really like that logic there. And they just don't really have that many weapons, and the weapons they do have, they are, getting older. And Mike Williams is never able to stay healthy. Keenan Allen's getting older and kind of losing a step. I personally wasn't a huge Quentin Johnston guy. I actually had him lower on my receiver rankings than Tank Dell and Michael Wilson. And that was, I mean, I didn't really get to I didn't have time last year to do the top 10 receivers, so I really wish I was able to put that out there because it just seems like it's revisionist history. And you could hold me to this if he comes back and becomes like the greatest wide receiver on the face of the earth, but I just wasn't like a huge fan of him personally. I just didn't really love his skill set, and I think that's kind of proven to be true. Me personally, I don't really see him becoming a greater player, but I mean, he still has that potential. So it's like, if now you get Johnston, if Williams could stay healthy, you can get Allen, and then you replace Gerald Everett with Brock Bowers, or you even run a 12 personnel and have them both on the field at the same time, even though I don't know if those are the two tight ends you really want to run that with, but I think that's a really solid deal. So I'm going to go with Brock Bowers. For the Giants, this is tough because I keep seeing Jaden Daniels going here. I kind of like that fit, honestly, because I've never been a huge Daniel Jones guy personally. I think Daniels could benefit from maybe sitting the extra year, or like, having to compete for the job. And I really love the idea of pairing him with Brian Daboll, who I think is an excellent offensive mind, and, who was able to make Josh Allen work out, even though Allen obviously is so talented in his own right. It's like he doesn't just necessarily need a coordinator to scheme it up for him. But at first, that's kind of what was happening. It's like, Daboll brought along Allen, and then Allen took the reins himself and then became a better player. I could see that happening with Jaden Daniels, who has so many physical tools. And I mean, Daboll made it work with Daniel Jones, who is like a worse rusher, which is kind of surprising because he's like Vanilla Vic over there, but also like he's probably like the same amount as a passer right now, which is crazy. Like, they both miss as many opportunities in the middle of the field, which drives me nuts. But like, I really think that Jaden Daniels is probably like, like slightly worse as a passer, just to give him like Daniel Jones some credit. But like, I think ultimately, like, if you take Jaden Daniels, like, you're in a pretty good spot. And I'd really like to see what Daboll could do scheming up some stuff for him. So I'm going to take Jaden Daniels here for the Giants. Titans, I'm sorry, Titans fans, that I'm not going to elaborate on this one too much, but this is literally just a run the pick type in. Like, you are ecstatic that Joe Alt is here. They need a tackle. Get rid of Andre Dillard. He's not good. Draft Joe Alt. It's like, there's just not really much else to add here. So for the Falcons, you could take a quarterback. I don't really like any of the quarterbacks for pick number 8. You could take Rome Odunze. I don't really see a reason to. I really want to get them an edge rusher. I know that they have that Saints staff there who likes the bigger guys, so I would be interested in taking like a Jared Verse, for example. But also, like, you have Clark Phillips and AJ Terrell on the outside, right? And Clark Phillips, he's one of those smaller cornerbacks who, he came out last year. Everybody was saying, like, he's like a Darius Williams type, where it's like he's small and everybody's going to want to move him to the slot, but he plays better on the outside. I think that you could still take an outside corner and, kind of mix it up. Or you can even take like Terrion Arnold here to go play in the slot and keep Clark Phillips on the outside, and then draft like a outside corner later on. And I mean, Arnold, I'm sure, could play on the outside too if you find somebody who you like better in the slot. And I think Phillips was like a 3rd round pick. I'm actually going to look that up real quick. I don't really know. Clark Phillips the 3rd. He was a 4th round pick. Damn, so close. So it's not like you really want to rely on him to be one of your starters. I kind of like Terrion Arnold here. I also know they do that whole thing where they like put the peaches next to the Alabama or players who are from. Oh shit, never mind. That's Georgia. I'm an idiot. I was thinking of Nolan Smith from last year when they did they put like peaches on their draft board next to the names of players who played at Georgia or who are from Georgia or some shit like that. I don't know. Does this say where Terrion Arnold's from? Son of a bitch. I gotta look it up because maybe I'll just be right. Terrion Arnold. Let's take a look. He is from Florida, so that doesn't do anything for me at all. But you know what? We're gonna fucking draft him. I kind of like it for the Falcons. I dig it. All right, we're going to the Bears. This is easy. Rome Odunze. Put Caleb Williams, Rome Odunze, DJ Moore, Khalil Herbert, Roshan Johnson in together. I think that's going to be an awesome offense. You could argue for Olu Fashanu, but like I think that they're going to be, you know, they like the run game over there, and I think that you're going to be wanting to have somebody who's a better run blocker, and Fashanu is really not quite there in my opinion. You know, I think it's too easy to not, or I think it's too easy to take Odunze. Like, he's such a great receiving prospect, and he'd probably be a number one in like any other year. And to get him at 9 when you have like a generational level quarterback too, and you also have DJ Moore on the other side, and it's not like they don't have redundant skill sets at all. Like, they do different things. I think that would just be like excellent. And then you have Komet to go win in the middle for you. Like, I just think that would be an awesome receiving core. They need a lot of help on the defense, but there's nobody who I value higher than Rome Odunze at the moment. For the Jets, you're taking Olu Fashanu here. This is just too easy. I know that there's that whole thing about how Joe Douglas loves Talais Fuaga. Everybody's going to say whatever the fuck they want to say before the draft. There was also the whole thing about the Panthers loved CJ Stroud, and they didn't wind up taking him. I have no idea if they like Fuaga or not, but you're getting Rodgers back. You have like one shot to do this. Get a good fucking pass blocker, and that's Olu Fashanu. I know I'm probably a bit lower on him than some other people, but he's primarily a pass blocker, and I think he's probably a better pass blocker than Fuaga at the moment. And he has the highest upside to be a great pass blocker, and also great upside to be a great run blocker too. So just get him on the fucking field and call it a day. That's my opinion. Vikings, there has been a lot of talk about them going with like JJ McCarthy. I've watched 4 games of McCarthy. I wasn't a huge fan, but you know, it also depends on kind of what games you get. And I got like some of the games where he threw the ball like 10 times, and it's like I just haven't been able to get too much. They need cornerback help. I'd really like to see that. I think that I don't know if Hunter's still going to be there, so maybe they get like another edge rusher. I think that I'm not a huge Ed Ingram guy, so they could really go with interior offensive line. You know, it's possible that they could go Bo Nix here, and it's like this is one of those picks that is really going to depend on what they do in free agency. Like, if they get rid of Kirk Cousins, you know, it's like then they're probably going to pick a quarterback. But if like I would 100% pick Bo Nix here if they didn't have Cousins, but there's not really any update on what exactly is going on with that as far as I know. So it's like, should I assume they're getting rid of Kirk? Should I assume they're keeping him? I don't really know. For the time being, I'm going to assume that they hold on to Kirk, because I think that their team is still good enough that they could, like, you know, make a deep playoff run if they have Kirk. So I guess it becomes a question now of like cornerbacks and safeties. I think that they've really needed a DB, and I think that Cooper DeJean would probably be an excellent pick for them, just because, you know, like they've drafted safeties recently, but it also works out really well in that scheme with like kind of how they're doing stuff with Metellus too. It's like they could kind of rotate him in between that, like, you know, deep safety, strong safety, slot corner thing. It's like he could really do whatever they want for them, in my opinion, based on what I've seen from him so far. So I think that would be an excellent pick for them. So I'm going to go with Cooper DeJean. Broncos, they need a quarterback. I keep hearing Bo Nix to them. I genuinely really like that pick. I think it would be excellent for them, and I think he would be able to hit all of his upside there. They have a good receiving core. I wouldn't call it amazing or anything, but it's a good receiving core, and they have a great head coach who's great at scheming up the offense, and this to me is Bo Nix. It's too easy. I really like Jared Verse here for the Raiders. You know, there's a couple guys I like. Everybody's been talking for a while about actually getting some help for Max Crosby. I think that Jared Verse would be excellent to do that. Dallas Turner, I do have some concerns about, and I will be making a video on him. I think he has a ton of upside, but I also think that he has a bit of bust potential too. I could maybe go with Johnny Newton, and I think it would actually be really interesting because you can kind of put him on the same side as Crosby and just like overload that line. Like, he's an undersized guy, he's a good pass rusher, but you're going to need, he's going to be kind of more of a rotational guy, I think, in the beginning, because he's not going to be like an excellent run defender or anything. Tyree Wilson was just ass last year, so that didn't particularly work out. I mean, he could maybe develop. I kind of like Jerzon Newton here, but like, I also really like Jared Verse because he's like that bigger edge rusher. He's very powerful, but it's like you kind of just took that in Tyree Wilson. It's like, do you want to give up on him that fast? And it's like, I don't think that they really need a tackle either, because like I actually think Jermaine Illuminor is fine, like perfectly fine, and Colton Miller, he's good too. I think I'm gonna go with Johnny Newton here. Saints, like Jared Verse is their kind of edge rusher, like that bigger edge rusher type. I don't really see them going with the Dallas Turner. Do you want, I guess a lot of this question goes down to like whether or not you want to bail on the Trevor Penning experience so fast. And I mean, I was not a big fan of Penning coming out. I didn't really like him all that much. I thought that he got unnecessarily hyped up for just kind of being an asshole. No offense to him, I guess. But more an asshole in the field. I don't know what he's like off the field, but you know, getting beaten and pushing people around after the play doesn't mean shit. Like, to me, it's like, I would rather you just win and then shut up. Like, you know, I mean, I even, like, if you want to win and then just be in people's face and scream at them, I'm fine with that too. I mean, I hate the stupid taunting penalties, but ultimately, the one common denominator there is that you actually win your reps, and he just doesn't do that much. For me, I'm taking Fuaga here. Like, I think that's probably their best course of action. He's not as good as a pass blocker, but he's a really great run blocker. I think that he has the tools to develop as a pass rusher or pass blocker, and he has, like, you know, he has that mean streak in him. I know Latham is like a much bigger guy. Let's see, he's 6'6", 335. Damn, big boy. I haven't really watched quite as much of him yet, but I think I'm going to go with Fuaga here. Colts, they so badly need a cornerback. If they didn't need a cornerback so badly, I would probably take Dallas Turner, because I know they love those guys with high-end traits. But I think if you're them, you have to take a corner. Like, you have no choice. Their corners are atrocious. Nate Wiggins, I would be intrigued by, but also Chris Ballard is like, he loves the traits, and Quinyon Mitchell is going to be probably one of the faster cornerbacks. Like, he is just so, like, explosive. But Wiggins is a bigger guy, and I know that Ballard also likes, like, the bigger guys with length too. I'm not sure how lengthy Nate Wiggins is. That's what she said. I think I'm actually gonna, I've kind of talked myself into going Wiggins here. I think it kind of fits them a bit better, and you know, he's just he's a really light guy, but I think he works well in their scheme. So I'm gonna take him. Seahawks, they need an edge rusher. Oh, man, I'm really intrigued by going with Dallas Turner here. My concern with him is that he plays like a power rusher in a speed rusher's body. But I would be really interested to see him next to Boye Mafe and like Uchenna and Nwosu. Like, I think that would go, I think it'd go well. And I you know, he kind of reminds me of some of those other like traitsy pass rushers like Ojabo, who were on the Ravens. And it's like, you know, McDonald did a great job with those. So, or with them. So I'm going to go with Dallas Turner. The Jaguars desperately need edge rush. Trayvon Walker is not pulling it, in my opinion. It's like kind of annoying because like you're going to be giving up snaps for your first round or first overall draft pick to give it to, you know, a different first round pick. And it's like, like, do you want to, you're not really giving up, but it's like you're not really helping both of their development if you're switching them out. Walker's not really going to be a guy that you can move inside, but I think that, like, you know, Verse, you could maybe move inside, like, he's a bigger guy, but it's like, do you really want to do that? Because he hit most of his potential is on the outside, so it's like you're giving up potential so that you can keep Trayvon Walker on the outside, and it's like, I'd rather just have Verse in there. it's almost like I'd rather just not take an edge rusher at all, because it's like you don't want to give up snaps for guys. But I mean, D-line is always rotation. It's just that I'm concerned, I guess, about like development, if you're not going to be on the field quite as much. So, it's a tough one. I know that they kind of need interior offensive line. It's not like a huge need. They could really go for a center. Luke Fortner wasn't really great last year. Their cornerback started off the year really well and then ended very badly. I don't know what they're going to do with Calvin Ridley, so it's like you could conceivably go like see them going with like a Brian Thomas Jr. Oh man, this is tough. I like Laiatu Latu as well. I actually really like him. I think that he has a very good floor, but you could also go with McKinstry. It's like you have Darius Williams on the outside, and he's like a great outside corner, but you cannot put him in the slot. It's like if I really like the Terrion Arnold pick to them, because it's like he can kind of fill whatever role is just not working out for them. But, you know, they have Tyson Campbell in the other outside spot. That's what it looks like right now. They could go with Quinyon Mitchell. Like, this is such a tough decision to me, because I really want to pick an edge rusher. And, you know, like, if I'm the GM, I guess, like, this is what I would do. I would pick an edge rusher and just say, like, fuck it, go figure it out. So we're going to take Jared Verse. Very powerful guy. He could definitely overwhelm with power. I think that'll work well even with like rotating with Walker, because he's kind of like a traitsy like finesse guy, I guess, a bit more. And I think he can kind of it'll kind of like confuse offensive linemen out when they have to keep going against different guys. Bengals. Let's see. A lot of this I think also depends on whether they get rid of T. Higgins or not. I think that'll be an interesting decision. He kind of had a down year last year. Awuzie also had a down year, which I wasn't really super happy about, because I like him. I'm pretty sure he's the guy who I saw on like that NFL player chess thing, and then I was like, man, this guy seems cool, and then he just like sucked after that. I was sad. You know, the edge rushers are good there. Like, I think that they've kind of already replaced their third receiver with Charlie Jones or whatever his name is. I'm kind of between like taking JC Latham or Kool-Aid McKinstry. Like, I don't really like Jonah Williams. I don't think he's that good. He had like those like couple of games where he's playing well, and then he was not very good after that. I also really like McKinstry because they have Cam Taylor-Britt on the outside, and he's just not really that great. And it's like, I guess it depends on who you see more upside with and who you think best fits into the scheme. Latham is kind of like one of these bigger guys, and it's like, so is Orlando Brown Jr., so it's like, you know, they kind of have like two guys on the opposite side who kind of do the same thing, which is not like a huge deal, but it's like maybe you want a little bit more diversity. You know, I'm trying to find like any tiebreaker here, because I could conceivably see them going with either. I think Latham is a very strong player. And you know what? Yeah, it's like you really don't want to risk Burrow getting injured anymore. I think that's a way better tiebreaker than whatever bullshit I was trying to come up with 2 seconds ago. So we're going to go with Latham. You have the length now. You get more protection for Burrow. You get Jonah Williams out of there. Rams, they need a cornerback badly. I think Quinyon Mitchell is just too easy to pick here. Super speedy guy, very explosive. I don't have a lot of tape on him because he goes to Toledo. I have one All-22 video from last year, so I haven't really been able to watch much of him, but kind of what I've gathered is that he works best in a zone scheme, but when he went to the Senior Bowl, he did pretty well for himself doing man stuff. So next we have the Steelers. I like the Jackson Powers Johnson thing too much. I've watched quite a bit of his tape and I really enjoy him. He dominated at the Senior Bowl. One of his big problems is that he lowers his head into contact way too much. Like, he initiates contact with his head, And I was listening to this interview with like the director of whatever. He works for the NFL. He's like the director of like player health or some shit like that. And he was interviewing with PFF. It's a really fascinating interview if you haven't watched it. I can't remember the guy's name. I know I'm being super informative here, but he was basically talking about how they have like trackers now who, what offensive linemen have more head-to-head contact than others. And I think he's going to be at like the top of the list immediately because it's like every damn play he lowers his head into contact, but he just doesn't fucking lose. Like he's really powerful. He has great anchor. He can move guys. He moves pretty well. Like he just does everything like really well. And if I remember correctly, I think he only had like one pressure given up on this entire season, which is just incredible. So I could be completely wrong about that, but even without that, it's like he's still amazing. So I'm going with Jackson Powers-Johnson. Now we're going to talk Dolphins. I would be interested to see Brian Thomas Jr. I love Brian Thomas Jr. and I'm probably going to make a video on him soon, but he is so speedy and can win over the top, but he's huge. And it'd be so interesting because they have Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill, who I think are both under 6 foot. And then you could have Brian Thomas, who's like 6'4" or something like that. What is it? Yeah, 6'4". He's 6'4", 205. I think he's listed at the same height and weight as Marvin Harrison Jr. And although I wouldn't say that he's Marvin Harrison Jr., he has a pretty good release package for someone of his size, and he has pretty good nuance during his routes. I mean, he's a big guy, so he's not always going to be like the most explosive ever, but I think that he's pretty explosive for how big he is, and he has excellent speed to win vertically on guys. He's going to need more of a route tree, but I think that the Dolphins could do a lot with him, but I'm kind of just throwing different things out there because I think it'd be fun. I don't know if that's the best pick for them. They've needed offensive line the last years, but like Austin Jackson kind of had a good year this season. And Armstead is always hurt, but he also plays well when he's actually out there. I would be interested in taking a cornerback for them, primarily because like you still have Ramsey, but Xavier Howard is really falling off. Like he did not play well last year. He wasn't looking great the year before that. And then you have Kader Coho in the slot, who I actually like. But I mean, he's still, I think, an undrafted guy, and it's not like he's the most upside ever. I like him just relative to where he was drafted, but he's not like incredible or anything. So I think that they could really benefit from having a corner, and I think it would help their defense out a lot. So if we're going to narrow this down to corner, I haven't gotten to watch anything from Ennis Rakestraw. I think it's too easy to go with Kool-Aid McKinstry here. I know they just took Cam Smith last year, but I mean, I think he played a little bit this year and wasn't really fantastic. And it's like, that's a position where you're always going to have injuries and where you're always going to have a lot of guys on the field, especially when you're a nickel. So it's like, take the guy when he's there. So I'm going to go with Kool-Aid McKinstry. Wow, I fucked that up real bad. Eagles. I have been hearing this thing about how, who was it? Lane Johnson has been hyping up Tyler Guyton a lot. And Tyler Guyton is this guy who has excellent movement skills. He has a lot of potential. And they kind of did this a couple years ago when they took Cam Jurgens because Jason Kelce really liked him. So they listen to their players a lot. I don't know if it's going to wind up actually being that way, but I could see them taking a Tyler Guyton. Like, I think that would kind of work really well for them. But they do really need cornerbacks. This is like another team. I think that they would be livid if McKinstry just went off the board right before them. Like I said, I haven't gotten to watch Rakestraw or whatever. I've heard pretty good things about him. He's 6 foot, so he's not like the tallest corner ever. They're definitely not taking a linebacker in round 1. So, like, if I'm them, I want a cornerback. I haven't really watched too much of Kamari Lassiter either. I know I'm being incredibly informative, so you're welcome. But I'm going to go with Rakestraw just because he's the next corner on the board. And, as we get deeper into this, I'll have watched some more of these guys and definitely a lot more thoroughly. So I could give a little bit more background on it. Here, I'm just kind of trying to fill a need, even though that's not how you should necessarily draft. You should take the best player on the board. But I think that there's like kind of guys who are around the same range. Like, I'd really say Latu and Brian Thomas and Amarius Mims. It's like, it's kind of hard to say what the best player is out of those three. It really depends on what you need at that point, because I think you just kind of use it as a tiebreaker. The Texans. I like Laiatu Latu going here, but I'm going to have Amarius Mims, who is massive. I think that he would be excellent for them, especially because although like Stroud was able to make a lot work last year, they had like a backup offensive line like the entire season. Like, barely anybody on their offensive line was healthy, and they were, holding up surprisingly well. But, George Fant, I think, is their right tackle. He's getting older and kind of falling off a bit. And it's like, Tunsil is excellent, obviously one of the best tackles in the league. But I don't think that you really want to rely on Fant again. And, I think it also works out really well because Amarius Mims is one of these guys who needs to develop. And you could conceivably have him like rotate in and out with Fant and, kind of start Mims when you're ready, so you don't feel pressure to start him immediately. So I really like Amarius Mims going there. For the Cowboys, Brian Thomas Jr. again would be pretty interesting. I would be interested in Troy Franklin. This is kind of the weird thing with them because they really, really need defensive line help. But they need a guy who can stop the run. I think Byron Murphy is really more of that, like pass rushing type. And they just supposedly took this guy last year in Mazi Smith. But he really hasn't been that guy. So, Ladd McConkey would be interesting too. Oh man, CeeDee Lamb and Ladd McConkey. That would be so interesting. Oh man. I mean, Brian Thomas Jr. too would be super interesting, but just because like you have like the route running precision of CeeDee Lamb and the athleticism and explosiveness, and then you have like McConkey, who is like he's an excellent separator as well. It'd be so hard to cover them. Oh shit, I accidentally hit my recording interface thing here. I don't really necessarily think they need an edge. I think you could go with Jordan Morgan at tackle. Terrence Steele has not really been excellent, and you might be ready to move on from him. So I think that might be where I wind up going. Yeah, I think we're going to go with Jordan Morgan. He's like one of these guys too. Obviously, all of them need to develop, but he looked pretty good at the Senior Bowl from what I've heard. And yeah, so we'll put Jordan Morgan in there. Packers. Well, they're not going Brian Thomas Jr., I'll tell you that much. Troy Flank, they're never going to touch a receiver. Braylon Trice would be interesting. Byron Murphy. I like almost don't really know who to take for them because it's like in a lot of the spots that they would take guys, they have other players who they're kind of looking to develop. I would be happy taking a cornerback here for them. So I'm going to go with Kamari Lassiter, especially because they love their Georgia players. So Kamari Lassiter, I think this is where the fall for Laiatu Latu stops. I think that he would be excellent in Todd Bowles' scheme. He is, I mean, I know that I'm drafting him a little bit late, but I see him as such a high floor player, and he has excellent counter moves and hand usage. He's so much more refined than most guys coming out. He's just kind of an injury risk. He was medically retired at some point, but I think that this guy, he has a lot of upside, and like I said, I know he fell, but I really like his potential, and I think that he could be an excellent edge rusher for them, especially working with Todd Bowles. Cardinals, they took Malik Neighbors before. You could have Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas Jr. I know I'm cracking myself up every time I say Brian Thomas Jr., but it's always for a different reason. I just love him, so I really want him to be in a good spot. And having him and Michael Wilson next to each other, because I loved Michael Wilson last year, and then adding him to Malik Neighbors is funny to me. But they so badly need an edge rush. I know they took Ojulari last year, and they have Dennis the Barbarian Gardeck, who's like obviously the best edge rusher of all time. But they could use a lot more power in there, and that's where you kind of get Braylon Trice, like one of these bigger guys, 274. I think that he lines up well next to, or not next to, but on the opposite side of Ojulari, who's more of a speed rusher type. So it's like now you switch him off, and kind of confuse the tackles and have to make them keep dealing with different things, I think that would be an excellent pick for them. Bills, Brian Thomas Jr., I think, is too easy for them. They have the vertical threat in Gabe Davis, but Gabe Davis is so damn inconsistent, it drives me nuts. But I also really like Ladd McConkey because he's just like, he's a consistent separator, and it's like when you can't get to Diggs, it's like you can now rely on McConkey. The only concern I have with that, I guess, is that like Kincaid might sometimes be in the slot. So if you have McConkey like in the slot, now it's like you're taking snaps away. I mean, McConkey can play on the outside a little bit, but like, preferably like he's such a great route runner. Like you want him in the slot, I would think. But I think I would definitely go with receiver because I'm just not huge on Gabe Davis right now. Keon Coleman, I think, would be a really nice pick for them because I think it gives them something different than what they currently have, which is like, a big-bodied guy who has upside to also separate. I know he's not a great separator right now, but like he's huge and he has a big catch radius and he's a very good ball tracker. So it's like I could see him coming up with some of these difficult contested throws that Josh Allen can make, but that some of these receivers have a tough time bringing in. He's not going to do it all the time, but like he really can. So I think I'm going to go with Keon Coleman. I don't know why I haven't taken Brian Thomas Jr. I'm not going to force myself to, but I do really like him as a prospect. So to me, this is quite a fall for him. Lions. They need an edge rusher, I would say. Who do we still have at edge rush? Jonah Ellis, Darius Robinson, or Chop Robinson. I would be really interested in these two guys. I haven't watched much of Braswell yet. 6'3", 255. Yeah, I mean, obviously you can't tell that much just from looking at their heights and weights. Chop Robinson has high upside, but I also think he relies quite a bit on his athleticism. Darius Robinson, I've heard excellent things about too, and he just played really well at the Senior Bowl. He is like a very powerful player, big guy. I mean, like I just showed you 6'5", 296. That's very big for an edge rusher. That's what she said. Well, I guess she wouldn't be commenting on edge rushers. I don't know. I guess if it's a chick who likes football, that is what she said. If it's not, then she'll be saying something else. I don't know. I kind of like Darius Robinson for them here. I think that works really well for him. Have him alongside Aiden Hutchinson. So we'll go with that. Ravens. They need cornerback help. TJ Tampa. Who do we still got at corner? That's like actually making me scroll and shit now. Cornerback. Kalen Carson. Ronaldo Green I like as like a press corner. Oops, I was trying to get out of this. Super exciting content, I know. I think I'm gonna go with TJ Tampa. I have Brandon Stevens on the other side. It's nothing really too interesting, so I think we are going to go with TJ Tampa. Okay, yeah, I already clicked it. So 49ers, I'd be really interested in seeing Troy Franklin there, especially if they let Ayuk walk. They don't super need a lot of guys, but they also do need players on the offensive line, and I love the fit of Tyler Guyton because he moves so well, and just getting that guy out in front of like McCaffrey, like as a lead blocker, or having him pull across the line, and having him learn from one of the best offensive linemen of all time, I think it's too easy. Oh man, I want to go Brian Thomas Jr. again, but he's kind of like a big vertical guy, and I think that's a little bit redundant with MVS, even though I think like he can wind up being a better player than MVS, but it's like the Chiefs really need somebody reliable, and I would really like to see Ladd McConkey there. That would be really interesting, but to me, it's like they need a receiver. Like I'm not even considering any other position. I guess it's kind of your pick, like your flavor of who you like best. I'm really interested in seeing Ladd McConkey there, so I'm going to go with Ladd McConkey. I'm going to go with Ladd McConkey, so you can call me an idiot if you want. I probably am an idiot, but yeah, this is my mock draft. Let's take a little look-see. So Caleb Williams, Drake May, Marvin Harrison Jr., Malik Neighbors, Brock Bowers, Jaden Daniels, Joe Alt, Terrion Arnold, Rome Odunze, Olu Fashanu, Cooper DeJean, Bo Nix, Johnny Newton, Talais Fuaga, My voice cracked. Talais Fuaga, Nate Wiggins, Dallas Turner, Jared Verse, J.C. Latham, Quinyon Mitchell, Jackson Powers Johnson, Kool-Aid McKinstry, Ennis Straw Jr., Mary Spims, Jordan Morgan, Kamari Laster, Leatu Latu, Braylon Trice, Keon Coleman, Darius Robinson, TJ Tava, Tyler Gutton, Lad McConkey. All right, cool. So, I know this was the first video on the second channel. If you think I'm like extremely boring now, damn, that sucks. I'm still kind of getting used to doing stuff like this. I don't know why I said I'm getting used to. I've never done it before. This is like the first time ever doing like a kind of off the cuff video where you could just hear my thoughts out loud. So, hopefully it didn't scare you off too much. And if you don't like it, then just watch the main channel, I guess. But, I'm just kind of doing this for fun. I want to be able to get more of my takes out there and talk more ball with you guys. But, it's kind of hard being able to put out like full produced videos every week, especially when I have a full-time job. So I think that this is just a bit easier for me to do. It takes like an hour. I'll probably go back and take out parts where I said like something really stupid or like made weird noises with my mouth or something. I don't know. But other than that, guys, thanks for watching. I appreciate it. And later.